Hey everybody, thanks for joining me here and thanks for checking out my podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell for new episodes. You can also find Shine Without Shame on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Oh, that rings true, and I'm sure for many people that this idea you're sharing and the experience you're sharing rings true. It's even if someone hasn't thought deeply about this, it's, yes, that we are, and it's been said several times on the podcast, if you're here, that means you're meant to be here, worthy. So yes, I appreciate you emphasizing that as well. It's important to be reminded that yes, we're all here. We all are allowed to take up space, and the power in, I guess, self-care or giving yourself the time, being excellent in taking care of yourself, how the power that can have on your body and your mind should not be lost on any of us. And your example and your story emphasizes that so well. I so appreciate that. In some of the work I do, I am connected to the chakra system. So, of course, what you're talking about is, I'm sure you already know, but just for others listening, that, that is the solar plexus in terms of the energy systems, the energetic systems of the body, which maybe semantically might be crossing over other modalities. But in terms of the chakra system, the solar plexus is about self-worth and is about our confidence and our inner light, and also about the recognition, our recognition in the world, which I find so interesting. So that inner light that comes from within us, people will pick up on it. It's not a physical light necessarily that people see, but they will pick up on that, and they'll just be like mesmerized by someone. We've probably all been that someone who's been has mesmerized others just by being, not because we're being charismatic or we're doing anything special, but it's our inner light people pick up on, and they just think, wow, you're doing such good things, or you seem like you're glowing, and it's attractive to people. I know that it's a little, I think, sometimes challenging to use new age language, if I may say that, and make it grounded in in a way that people can connect to. So this idea of the inner light, I think everyone understands probably what someone's inner light is, but I say it because for some people it's like, what are you talking about, inner light? There's nothing that I don't relate to that, but it's just about being who you are, that confidence, having that self-worth. And I think what you just described was a process for nurturing that and nourishing that. And one of many ways, I'm sure. And then you can go back out in the world and feel like, yes, I'm worthy. I'm meant to be here. And other people, they do notice that. It's not ego that when you're coming from that place, it's not ego that they're picking up on. It is that inner light, and it is that confidence, but it's being kind of recognized for that in very subtle ways. And I guess that connects to this idea of shining without shame. We all have that inner light, and we all should feel worthy to connect to it and to make our contributions in the world, to our families, to our neighborhoods and communities, and so on and so forth, to our workplaces. I know that this, for some people, is not always something that they kind of connect to because it is abstract, but I think it's important to acknowledge this idea of worth, self-worth. And again, it doesn't have to be connected, and it is not, when you really are in your self-worth, you're not connected to the ego, right? About, being better than, that's not what it's about. there is a distinction. And I know some people kind of walk that line, and it can be a shameful thing of like, am I, am I kind of, am I boasting? Am I trying to be better than, or am I just being me? It's important to get clear about where you're coming from in terms of your thoughts and your attitudes and how you feel about yourself. I mean, this can be a lifetime of work. I know for me, it was many, many years of getting to a place where I felt worthy. And I wonder if you connect with this. I have found that when I became aware of, just started to do more self-awareness work, and even had within that was dealing with and acknowledging some painful experiences, right? And I had to deal with some wounds, address some wounds that needed some healing. But as I did that work, Faraneh, as those wounds started to heal, I started to accept myself. And then the next step was I started to like love myself, which all that is to me is just being good with who I am and what I have to offer. And then I started to feel like I belonged, like I'm worthy to be here, just like every other person. For me, that was a big theme since I was a child, of not feeling like I belonged in any situation. And maybe there were even times where I subconsciously believed that I didn't belong, so that I would just sort of gravitate toward people who would help reinforce that, unfortunately. Oh, it's a doozy, that whole journey. But I got clear. I had help, many people to help me get clear. And therapy was part of that. Also just friends who were wiser, who could talk through and talk about their experiences. But for me, there was kind of a sequence. It was becoming self-aware, starting to accept who I am and that I'm not perfect, but I do my best to be a good person. I do that as a daily practice. And now it's quite a solid practice. In the past, it wasn't so solid, like meditating. For me, it's praying and sometimes journaling, and those are the main ones for me. And they're different for everybody, I acknowledge. But getting to a place where I just could accept, oh, this is me. Whatever I thought I was, I can't hold on to that. This is who I am. And I'm okay with it, imperfections and all. And that started to just change, who I interacted with, how I spoke about myself. And then I just really kind of went from self-acceptance to self-love, which has been, I think, much more recent, like solidly in the self-love, much more recent place. And that then leads me to feeling like I belong here and that I'm worthy to be here. But I think it's, I guess the point I'm also making, and this is where I'm wondering if you relate to it, is it's not just like I belong here. I know I belong here. I mean, for me, it wasn't just mentally telling myself that. Maybe for someone, they can get there by just telling themselves that. For me, it was a much more involved journey, like in those steps that I've already expressed. Yeah, it's been a journey, but whew, I do feel now like I'm it's okay for me to walk the earth.
Yeah, I think that is a profound story, and one that I would agree with. Like, I think a couple of things come to mind with what you've shared. This idea of belonging is powerful. I think it's another Brene Brown book, Braving the Wilderness, I think it is. But she talks about this idea that you have to belong to yourself first. And I think the way Julie frames it is this idea of like internal versus external referencing. And so, when you're internally referenced, you sort of understand why it is you are here. And it has nothing to do with what other people may think about what your purpose is here. And so I think that the worthiness path is interesting, because I think when you accept the premise that every person on this planet is worthy of being here, that therefore includes you. So you can just sort of accept it as a premise. Then you can work with the idea of self-acceptance, right? So then if I am worthy of being here because I am in fact here, then why am I here? And what are the things that make me me that I can contribute to this world, that I can offer here? And then you can get to that path of loving those things, and loving, I mean, basically, I mean, all the things, right? You know, so all the things make you you. Objectively, some people might think some things are less ideal than others, or you might think some things are less ideal than others. But all of those things are part of you, and you came this way. And what does that mean? What does it mean that you came in this body with this idea, with these ideas, with that family, from that part of the world, with that skin tone? What does it mean that you are here in this form? And how then does that inform your offering, your gift to us? But I think we do have to accept the premise first, because otherwise you can't prove the thing, right? I realized that if I don't think I'm worthy fundamentally, I can't ever become worthy on that journey. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? If I don't accept it at first, it can't exist at last.
Right.
Right. And so that is sort of a mental thing that we could accept. Right. And we can just accept it on the basis that everybody who's here is here for a reason. Right. So you don't even have to be special in that. Right. But if we accept that you are here for a reason, then you are worthy. And what then will we do with that? What then will you do with that?
Yes, that's a really nice articulation, and I appreciate the encouragement in your voice and in your words. That's what I really want for people, is to feel that they, and believe that they are supposed to be here, and that there's room for them, right? I don't like the idea of the scarcity complex, or this idea that there's just not enough for everyone to really shine or give their best or succeed or receive opportunities. I know that this is like the hustle of our current era, because I gotta just do more, put more out, so that I can be recognized, so that I can be acknowledged. And maybe in some cases, sure, more output does give you more acknowledgement, but I'm really into the idea of quality, intention, right? If we have pure intentions, pure motives, and what we offer in our work, in our relationships, in our community life, whatever realm you want to think about, if what we're offering is coming from a place of a pure heart, pure intentions, even if you can only give someone 2 minutes of your time, a friend, a family member, someone who needs you in the moment, but if you're doing it if you can do it from a place of intense intention and purity, that'll be so much more fruitful, in my opinion and in my experience, than coming from a place of like, what's in it for me? Like,
Well,
what am I getting out of this? And then, okay, I'll give you a couple minutes of my time, or I'll share some of my experience if you're trying to like learn about an industry that I'm in. I wonder sometimes, does that really get us where we want to be, in terms of like, are we giving someone the best that we really can offer? And are we allowing ourselves and our true gifts to really be offered, and to share those with people in meaningful ways, when it's just all about the hustle, and I got to do more. And like, okay, I'll help you, but like, what are you going to do for me? That just seems to be so ripe, the atmosphere right now, at least in what I observe around me personally, but also just out in the world. It's all about that like hustle and like, I want to be the best. I want to be noticed. And I don't think that premise is, well, I don't think it's sustainable, but I also think it's not accurate in my humble opinion. The idea that we all can contribute our talents, our gifts, our abilities. There's enough opportunity for everyone to make those kinds of contributions day in and day out and feel like we are valued for who we are and respected for who we are. I I just wonder what needs to shift. And maybe
Well, I think it's the
I
premise. I think hustle culture comes from a place of proving your worth, proving your utility, proving your value. And if
Mhm.
that is not in your concept at all, if I'm already valuable as is, that very much shifts how I engage with the world and how I engage with others. You know, you've literally taken out ego in your interactions because there's nothing to prove. And then you can meet each other cleanly. And then you can get to what you described as purity of heart or purity of motive, right? But that can only exist if I think myself worthy, right? Otherwise, there's another motivation, right? Otherwise, I'm striving for excellence. Otherwise, I want to be the best. Otherwise, you know, there's a sneaky motivator at play, right? So the worthiness piece, in my opinion, I find it a helpful organizing thing in my own mind. And I also think it cleans up a lot of interaction. It cleans up how we can be with each other and how we can be in the world in a helpful way. And it also cleans up the baggage of the delusion of control, right? If I offer purely, I accept what comes, right? I'm not in control of that outcome, right? It might not be as perfect as I wanted or as beautiful as I wanted or whatever, but I offered cleanly and I accept that.
I appreciate the points you're making. And I'm curious though what you think about when you say what you're thinking about when you say striving for excellence. Because for some people that is a noble thing, but what I think you might be speaking to something else. Would you just say a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely like I want to do my absolute best, but the way that I had tethered my worthiness to excellence, it meant that I didn't do many things, right? So if I wasn't able to do it perfectly or the best, right, in a way that, like, I think it changes who's defining it, right? Because in many ways, like, somebody has to say it's excellent, right? Somebody has to say it's the best.
Mm-hmm.
But if I want to offer, if my worthiness is not a piece of this, right? And I just want to offer all that I have in a moment, that is different. That quality of that thing is different than that thing being excellent, right? So I don't, like, personally, and then this is partially semantics, like, the virtues are there for a reason. We all strive to embody them. Embodiment of the virtues being the highest achievement, right? We don't just talk about the virtues, we want to embody them. We want our actions to speak to these virtues, right? But it's a difference of intention, right? Do I want this to be objectively graded as A+, or do I want this offering to be the best I have in this moment? And so that's what it was for me. And not to say that striving for excellence is a bad thing, but for me, it limited what I offered and it compromised what I offered.
That's insightful, Faraneh. That is. And the distinction is important and I think very helpful for some people who might listen and think, oh, but no, I know excellence is a good thing. But you distinguished really there's a nuanced kind of understanding of what it means to be excellent in the eyes of others and to come from a place of knowing who you are and what you have to offer, what you're capable of. And also and I know this is something that we've referenced our friend Julie Walker a couple of times that you've mentioned her, and she's a friend, and I'm very familiar with her work. But and she has said this many times, but this has been I'm giving her her dues, but I also want to be clear that this is an independent thought I've had on my own, is this idea of knowing everything, or I don't need to know everything. I don't need to be good at everything. I need to be good at what I am capable of and what naturally comes to me as something I can be good at, or I can excel in, or a gift I can offer. I wonder for some people that can be a bit of a stumbling block, this idea of being good at everything, and maybe this kind of parallels the being excellent at everything. But I don't want to know everything there is to know in the world. And I want to know that, and I want to accept that if I don't know everything, that doesn't mean I'm less intelligent, right? Intelligence is how you deal with information. It's not about have you memorized everything in a book? That's an aspect of intelligence, sure, but memorization, recalling. But that to me is not an exercise of my intelligence and my unique way of processing the world and challenges. And I don't care about being amazing at everything. I want to get really amazing at what I have to offer and what I have recognized as my unique gifts or abilities. And I think that also just takes some of that pressure off. Maybe in a way you were implying that through your distinction of excellence and what that means to you. And it's so freeing to just say, yeah, I don't care. I don't care if I don't know that. When I'm interested in something, I dig and I research, or I explore, or I have conversations. But yes, I think there must be many people walking the planet who have a lot of burden on their shoulders for a number of reasons. And a lot of that is not even the burden that they placed on their shoulders.
Exactly.
It's what's been placed on their shoulders by, family and authority figures in their lives, or those who they deem as influential to them. And I just wonder if people might want to reassess.
Right. I mean, so I would venture that these narratives of shame don't come from you at all. Right. So the things that we feel ashamed about, things that we feel shame for, come from other people. This notion that I had to excel at everything in a very specific way didn't come from me. Right. And so that's why it's not a helpful thing to pull through myself as I move about the world. Right. And so one of the things that you can pay attention to in your body is it feels uncomfortable, these narratives, right? The list of things that you think you should do or should be in this world doesn't feel comfortable in your body, right? And you might feel that in numerous places. We know where I felt my wound, but you can feel it in lots of different places. And it can help clue you into the fact that this isn't coming from me. This isn't about me. This is a thing, an arbitrary thing, or maybe you know where it came from, right? Maybe it's something your mom told you, or your grandmother told you, or, you know, it comes from a religious tradition, or, you know, or the way in which you've understood your religious tradition. But it's not a truth, you know, and so it doesn't feel good to you, right? So all of these narratives, I mean, and that's why, like, the being excellent was a burden to me. It may have made me good at some things. It may have made me study more, or whatever. But the outcomes felt hollow, right? You get an A and you're done, like, on to the next. But you fail, and how could I get up tomorrow? Right. And so, like, yeah, I think you've knocked at the core of the shame thing, which is just that it's not true information.
That's right. And fear certainly plays a part
Yes.
in the process. It's like we have to get clear about, okay, is this fear that I have because somebody made me think a certain way about myself, and I'm therefore afraid if I step around what I'm supposed to be, or how I'm supposed to behave, and how I'm supposed to think? Is it, and how does fear play a part? I think that's really important to get clear about fear versus truth. Like, what's true here? What is my truth? Like you said, and where is fear getting in the way of me clearly seeing what is true and allowing that to become a part of who I am, and how I feel about myself in the world. I think those are very important distinctions that's a very important distinction to make. And fear, fear is just pain. It is so pervasive. We all know fear personally. We all know about fear emotionally and instinctively, but I think that it is what keeps so many of us from connecting to ourselves, and then connecting to others, as fear is just everywhere. And I know I used to think that the opposite of love was hate. And then especially from Radio Raheem, and Do the Right Thing, his rings. But anyways, I think that was something that a lot of people think is the opposite of, of love is hate. I think it's really, but I realize now it's fear. Fear is at the root of everything. And so I know that many of us are walking around not only dealing with shame, but gripped by fear of, not being worthy or not being good. And it's true. Most of that wasn't cultivated by us. So I encourage people to start to, if they haven't already, to start to work through the layers and pull them back and get at the heart of this idea that we're all worthy. And for some people, maybe that is just a premise that is so foreign, or they just haven't even considered the idea of worthiness being critical and vital to our existence here. But it seems to me it's absolutely essential. Well, is there anything else that you want to share? Any other insights, Faraneh, or anything that you want to leave people with before we do wrap up, in terms of words of encouragement or resources?
No, and this has been very lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, I always end the podcast by asking my guests, and I'll ask you now, if you could recommend a television show, new or old, which one would you recommend and why?
This is super hard. I love, I actually love TV. I watch a lot of TV. Um, and I feel like I learn a lot from TV. But
Mm.
a huge favorite is This Is Us. I thought they did a really beautiful job with that show. And I think I think really good TV gives people a safe space to explore both themes that might be deeply meaningful to them, but also themes that might come up in their lives, right? That they might be navigating with other people, or in relationship. And so I thought This Is Us did that particularly well and was one of my favorites. But I think, yeah, TV when it works well can really, and certainly reading too. I read a lot,
Mm.
but can give people that kind of space to play around with different realities and different experiences, so that we can cultivate a lot more compassion for ourselves and a lot more compassion for each other.
You are probably the seventh or eighth guest to recommend that show. And I have to admit, not that anyone is asking me to, but it's on my list. I still haven't watched it. It's on my list. I know it's criminal. Well, in all fairness, I didn't have TV when it was actually airing. I don't have TV still. So I know I think now it is streaming on one of the platforms that I've got a subscription to, like all seasons. So it's just a matter of moving it up on the list of priorities, which that'll happen. But I appreciate that so many people, it's beloved by so many people, and it's made for TV history for sure. Faraneh, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your beautiful words, your insights, your words of encouragement. And I know that people will be touched, and I hope that they'll be inspired to explore the idea, especially the idea of self-worth and being worthy of being here. So thank you for underlining that, emphasizing it, highlighting it, bolding it.
Thank you. Thank you. This was a really very sweet conversation. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely.